Hey, Victor. Hello, everybody. Welcome to class today. Um, let me let Lenny in, let some people in. So, hello. Hey, Julissa. Just getting all the hellos going on. Logan, hello. Great to see everybody. Because of the way this semester goes, today is our last class meeting. It's technically not our, because we're a class that technically meets twice a week. It's not, but we only meet once a week. It's and the semester goes until Monday. The semester's over. So for me, in my head, I'm sad today's our last day together as a class, but not. But the semester still goes up until Monday. I had said last week I was trying to get reports to everybody on all the work, but I'm still in grading mode. I graded all the annotated bibliographies that were submitted, which were not many, so I want to talk about that. And you still have time to get that in and get it done. I'm going to share one of them with you of a student that one of your classmates that did a great job with it. So, so we're going to begin talking about the annotated bibliography, then we're going to swing right into the final exam. And let me just make sure the view is speaker right. We're going to swing into the final exam and read the Martin Luther King speech, talk about it, break it down, and then do two things in the second part of the class. I want to do a small writing assignment with all of you. And then the other thing I want to do is then I'm going to make time at the end of class today. Hopefully, I'm going to keep track of time like the last half hour. So that I could meet with each of you individually. So you have questions about like what work you submitted, what your grades are, we can just do that. And then whoever's not here, then they'll get a report. But and if any of you want a report, I can send it. But the person helping me put them together couldn't finish them until tomorrow. So one of the things that will happen between today and tomorrow, I'll email you the stuff I've graded, which are the annotated bibliographies, the White Rage. I've graded them. I just have to send you all your graded assignments, and that will be it. The last thing that we will do in the class is that you will take this final exam, which will be final exam week, which is I learned in a meeting yesterday that the Writing Center is going to be open until the 17th, Victor. I think that's right. So that means they're going to be open a little bit beyond the last day of class. And and I'm going to speak to everyone here in terms of, because I was also late with getting the grading stuff, and you'll have everything, tomorrow that you'll have until, I'm going to give you time until the 19th, but the priorities that you need to do is make sure that you do the final exam, because that's also like the annotated bibliography and the final exam are both vital because they make up too much of your grade, like 20% and 20%. And I'm not a fan of that equation, but that it's what it is. So you need to be able to complete them both and get decent grades, so that way your grade stays. If you've been getting good grades, that they stay there, and you end the semester with some good work. So first I'm going to talk about the annotated bibliography. I think is Samantha on the call in the class. I don't see Samantha. Samantha and I have had a little bit of a back and forth talking about it because they needed some support with it. They were still unclear, and I think I want to be able to create space today so that those of you who have not done it will have a chance to do it. But so I felt like we spent a lot of time in the assignment, and so in explaining it, and so you have it. And I think I'm going to share what one completed one looks like with all of you, so that you can see it. And this is oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna make a copy and take their name off of it so that, I mean, they will know who they are because if they're in class, they'll see that they, So I'm just going to share the screen. I blacked out their name so you can see it. And yeah, I'm just going to do that. This is an example of a classmate's annotated bibliography. And the reason why this was a good example is because I'll go through it. So first of all, if we even without reading anything and we look at the paper, we see that they follow the formatting that the annotated bibliography needs, that everything is double spaced, that the annotations in there are formatted with the right indentation, that that there's no extra space in between each annotation, right? And so that's that. So they did all the headings right, they did the page numbers right? Annotated bibliography. And then with each annotated bibliography, it follows the same format, right? They have the name of the last name, first name, the name of the article, the name of the journal or the anthology that it comes from. Here it has the editor, Scrivener, the year, and the pages that it comes from, right? And so all this information is correct and complete. So those two things that affect the grade, if first of all, that it's there and that it's correct and that it's complete, right? The second part is that then here's the annotation, the summary the way in which they understood it or what they needed to have in it. It's followed by the next one, and it has all of this information here correctly, and it has indented properly, and it has this next, the summary, the annotation is there, and it follows through all the way until the end, right? To the last one. So all five are present, all five are accounted for. It's given you, and they are also in alphabetical order, right? So this is letter A, this one begins with B, this annotation begins with F, right? And it's correct all the way to the end, R and G. So I wanted to say, and these are the five articles, and if I just look at this one here, let me make it bigger. I'm sorry. I'm hitting the wrong thing. Try to fix this. All right, make it a little bigger. If you look at this one here, they put the name of the authors, right, in the right order. The next thing is the title of the article. This so that those of you who did it and can see, if you didn't do this for each one, then the name of the article is that, the place it was published in was the New York Post, and then here's the date, and then here's the link for it, because it was a link that we sent you, and then the annotation, their summary of it, right? Here's this one as well. This one, they found a link, they added the link to it, but all the information is there for this one. And some of this information was in like I told you last class, on the front page of your syllabus, where I list a lot of this information, so you don't have to search too hard for it. It's there. But so if you submitted it and yours doesn't look like this just maybe has the title of the person with the article, and then it goes right into the annotation, is missing all this other stuff, that's considered incomplete, right? If it doesn't, if it just has the person's name, that's also considered incomplete. If there's some information that's missing that needs to be there, And then the other thing is that if it's not formatted correctly, that's the other thing that affects the grade. So I wanted to stop sharing. I'm stopping sharing, and yes, okay. Victor's commenting on it and saying to that student that that's excellent work, and love the summary. So yes, so that was great work from that particular student. There were 2 students that did excellent work. Everyone else made an excellent effort. I told you, so you'll see right now, if you've submitted your paper, you already can probably tell yourself, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Which is okay. You're going to get a grade for what you did do. I'll tell you, one of the things that weighed heavy in this was the annotation, was that you were able to summarize each of the articles and give a summary. So when I'm grading, that weighed more for it. I want you to understand the mechanics of all that. But really, I think one of the things that I wanted you to take away from this is that. So if you didn't do your all the other citations perfectly, you didn't fail the paper. I mean, but if you did strong annotations, strong summaries, and things were there, you did get credit, and you did get a grade for it. So, but I'll just email all the grades out tomorrow. I can say that only literally from this meeting, I have to go to another meeting and then I have to go to an event. Because tonight, I think I may have mentioned one of the things in my life is, in addition to a professor, I run a space and I have a theater. And tonight there's a play that they're doing that's mine. My other class got invited, but I'll send you all the invitation as well. So if you wanted to come just for fun, no obligation, welcome to come to it. But yes, so I have to go over to the theater, and then tomorrow it's all you tomorrow. So I will be sending you meaning this particular class. So I'm available. So yes, I think some of you are asking, some of you asked me in the chat, when is our last day of class? So today is our last day of class, because of the way the semester ends. Monday is the end of the semester. So after Monday, there's no more class and we meet on Tuesdays. So today's the last day we will be meeting together. That's why today we have to go over the essay for the final exam. I want to make sure you understand it, that we read it together. I'm going to read it with you. We began reading the beginning of it, but I'm going to read it. We're going to read it together because I want to make sure everybody has read it, and that you at least understand it. One of the things I will say with all of you in the class is that as you've been doing your essays, you have gotten progressively stronger. I mean, some of you started out strong and have remained strong in writing your essays. Some of you, had a little trouble at the beginning, but then improved as we went along. So I feel that in terms of like the idea of moving from one place to the next has happened. Now, the final exam is basically an essay, right? So it's basically saying you're going to write, can you write an essay? But before I go there, I want to just finish with the annotated bibliography. So for those of you who haven't done it, is it just a matter of time that you just didn't have time to do it? Or is there something that you don't understand? And if so, if you don't understand something, now's the opportunity to do it. Not that you will never see me again. You can email me and we can even set up a meeting later in the week, and even Monday, if you wanted to make time to meet, I can meet Monday, and I'll be around finals week. I'll be around as well, but by then most of the stuff is like checked off and done. So so I want to just take a moment to see if people have questions on completing their annotated bibliography. I'm sorry Samantha is not in class because she and I have, let me just check again. Yeah, she and I had several emails over this last day or two about it, back and forth. But yeah, see if there are any questions or anything that wasn't clear. Okay. Well, if something comes to you, let me know. There are 15 of you in class today, and I know I got, I think, 6 of them. So, so it's about 9 of you who still owe an annotated bibliography. Oh no, sorry, less, because Victor's part of that number. So there's less of you. There's there's 8, right? 8 folks who still owe a bibliography. So, whoops. All right.
Professor, I think you muted yourself. Sorry.
No, thank you. Because if somebody doesn't tell me, I'll just be talking to an empty room. Talking to in silent to to an empty room. I'm by myself here. But Aaliyah just sent me a note in the chat. Is it just to me or to everybody? Oh, to everybody. Yeah, definitely. I understand. And listen, I get it. In terms of being swamped and doing that stuff. That's why I'm a little lenient with submitting it, accepting late work. And like I think I said this, and if I didn't, if I said it, I'm gonna repeat it. That really kind of the new deadline for getting me anything that you're missing, and don't wait till this deadline, because today's the 7th, is the 19th, right? So that I'll accept any like late annotation or something like that to then, but just know that your final exams, so I'll go into that, is an essay, right? So the essay, you're not going to get the prompt for the essay today. We're going to just go over the article. I had asked you all to read it. That was like your one homework. Catch up on your work, and some of you did. And Aaliyah, I just want to acknowledge that I think you've gotten some grading from me over the weekend. Aaliyah has been catching up on the work that she owes. So I got that. So please, all of you, you're swamped. I'm here. Just try to get as much of the work done as possible and get it in so that you can get the best possible grade and move on to English 111 next semester. So your final exam is an essay, right? And I may be repeating myself, but it's good. It's going to be an essay, and it's an essay that will have its instructions, but you will get a prompt, right? And the prompt is basically the question. It's going to ask you a question about the essay that you have to answer, very much like the prompts that we have gotten for for, let's say, the white rage and the introduction one. It might say, like with those, the prompt was, let me not even be hypothetical, let me just be literal and tell you what, go to our site, go to our class. Bear with me. My computer's slow today. Okay, good. I think I say that every day. I was talking about someone else too, about how sometimes the computers slow down, or internet is slow, and we don't get refunds when that happens. But anyway, so for instance, here's an example of the prompt for the Jasmine Ward and Carol Anderson one. It says Jasmine Ward's introduction to the anthology, The Fire This Time, and Carol Anderson's essay, White Rage, is the same anthology. Both discuss historical events from the far and recent past that have affected Black lives. Identify at least one example from each essay of an historical event that has affected the Black lives of people, and what impact that event has had on progress according to the essays, right? So it takes a question that is not rhetorical, it's literal, that means you answer it, that is related to the article, and then it asks you, you have to read the article, understand it, to be able to answer the question. And many of you did a great job responding to that. It was one of the last things I was grading yesterday. So, the prompt will be something that will be similar to this in the sense that it will give you a question that you have to answer based on the essay. So the other thing is the other stuff that I was giving you when I gave you prompts, it also gives you instructions, right? So it says the amount of the length, the page length, it says reminds you the margins and the formatting and the layout and et cetera, all the things that you need to do to construct the paper, and then you will get that. So that instruction and the questions will go live on, 11:59 p.m. on December 14th. So by midnight, December 15th, you will have the information will be available to you. Not that any of you, I don't expect any of you to be awake waiting for that information to come through. But from that point on, you can begin working on it. So on Wednesday morning, when you wake up, you can take a look at go to Blackboard, and there'll be a final exam tab, and you will have the information, and you will have to upload the final exam. Now, the difference is the final exam will have to be uploaded through Turnitin. And so I'm just going to say that. Also, when I say something about the rest of the annotated bibliographies, those of you, I think Raylene, I just saw you uploaded yours, so thank you. But everyone else, I'm just going to ask if you can just email it to me and not upload it on Blackboard, right? So if you can just email me your annotation and don't upload it onto Blackboard. In addition to your final exam will also not be uploaded to Blackboard. It will be on Blackboard, but not in the discussion. There'll be an app called Turnitin that you have to do. And I'm going to show you that app in a minute, okay? But not in a minute for the end of class. I want to get to the essay. So I'm going to pause and just make sure that you all understand that your final exam is not something you come into school for. It's not like an exam that we do live. It's an essay that goes live on midnight, April 15th, and will be live until the 21st, when it is due at 11:59 p.m. And that is a hard deadline. I've been a little elastic with some of the deadlines give you time to submit your work, and all of that's good. The final exam, there is no elasticity. You have to submit it by 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, December 21st. And that is it. I think my grades have to be in 2 days after that. So they make that deadline really hard so that us professors get the papers, we grade them, and then we have to do all the paperwork that we have to do around all of that. I have one other announcement that I was in a meeting yesterday. That's why I found out about from the Writing Center and the English department meeting, that there were the directors of the center, Craig Bernardini and Victoria Munoz, announced at the meeting that they actually got funding or something to be able to stay open until the 17th. So that was great news. The other thing I just forgot that I found out in the meeting, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I have to get my grades in by a certain date, and all of you want to get your grades. So all the professors have to get their grades in by a certain date. So that's why it's a pretty hard stop with the final exam. And so please, I'll send you reminders during the week to make sure that you're working on it and getting it done. Unfortunately, I cannot work with you on it because that's just the nature of it. If we were live and you were sitting in class taking the exam, I can't workshop it with you. You have to take the exam. So with this exam, you don't have my work. I'm not sure, Victor, if they can use the Writing Center. Is that why you guys are open?
So from my understanding, from what I've been told from management stuff, is that we're not allowed to help students with their final. Any other work I can help you with, your annotated bibliography, I can help you with that. It's an assignment that's been given and I'm familiar with, but your actual final itself, I'm not allowed to give any instruction. If I were to see that, then I think I need to deny the appointment, but I'm not too clear on that. I'll speak to Shanika today and get more details.
Yeah, that's probably right. Like where in terms of the point, the idea of the final exam is that we, like Victor said, they can work with you, on if you have a essay that's still, outstanding, or the annotated or something like that, they can work with you up until the 17th with that. But and that's why I gave the deadline till the 19th of you all submitting anything late. That's the last time I'll accept it, because then I have to grade it and get all that in there. And then a couple of days later, your final exams will be done. If any of you want to do your final exams earlier, that would be great, because I'll get to grade them earlier. But and I know some of you are very quick with responding, but be quick and be thorough, okay? Make sure that this is your final. There's no revision. This is it. You're showing, you're letting me know that you've absorbed what you have absorbed in terms of constructing an essay, right? Intro, body, conclusion, thesis statement is clear in the introduction, etc. Okay, so I'll just pause for a second in case there's any more questions, but if not, I want to read the essays. Okay, check the chat. Okay, cool. Yeah, because this, how many essays for what? For the final? If it's the questions for the final, it's usually the same as regular. It's like 3 to 5 pages, anywhere. Shouldn't be more than 5. It shouldn't be less than 3. And if it's how many pages or something else, okay, great, cool. Great. If it's something else, let me know. All right, cool, excellent. So, all right. Victor just posted something very important in the chat, so make sure you check it out. Correct, but Jalan, oh yes, so right now, so going forward, good question, Jalan. I'm asking people to submit their annotation to the email, not Blackboard. Just if you're doing it, Relani got it in, but if anybody who's going to submit it tomorrow or whatever, I'm asking you to email it to me. Okay, and I'm going to make a note to send that out as an email in case somebody's not in class today. Great. Okay, let me just get the essay up, and I'm going to ask if, one moment, share screen. I keep hitting minimize for the apologies, my computer's taking a while, and I'll be right back in a second. Sorry about that. There is no heat in my building. That was just the landlord checking on some things. So I have work people in my house right now. So I apologize for that. All right, let me back. Where was I at? I was sharing my screen. Okay, let's go back here.
I think you need to reshare your screen.
Okay. 1 second. Everyone see it?
Yes, we.
Okay, great. So let's start with the beginning. I want to know, there's the entire essay is about 5 or 6 pages, 5 pages. So would anyone, can I ask somebody to help me to begin reading it together? Any volunteers? You can just unmute, you don't have to.
I can help you, Professor.
Okay, all right, Miguel. So can you see it okay?
Yes.
All right.
3 Ways of Meeting Oppression by Martin Luther King Jr. Oppressed people deal with their oppression in 3 characteristic ways. One way is acquiescence.
Yeah, acquiescence.
Acquiescence, yeah. Sorry. The oppressed resign themselves to their doom. They tacitly adjust themselves to oppression and thereby become conditioned to it. In every movement towards freedom, some of the oppressed prefer to remain oppressed. Almost 2,800 years ago, Moses set out to lead the children of Israel from slavery of Egypt to the freedom of the promised land. He soon discovered that slaves do not always welcome their deliverers. They become accustomed to being slaves. They would rather bear.
Yeah, that's correct. Bear, you're right, bear.
They would rather bear those ill they have, as Shakespeare pointed out, than flee to others that they don't know of. They prefer the flesh pots of Egypt, sorry, to the ordeals of emancipation. I don't know if that's a one. That's a one? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
One there? One there is such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that might be a typo. So
yeah, right.
or it might be a footnote or something, but I'm going to take it out. Go ahead.
There is such a thing as the freedom of exhaustion. Some people are so worn down by the yoke of oppression, that they give up. A few years ago, in the slum areas of Atlanta, a Negro guitarist used to sing almost daily. Bend down so long that down don't bother me. This is the type of negative freedom and resignation that often engulfs the life of the oppressed.
Just read the next sentence and then I'm going to go back.
Yeah. But this is not the way out.
Thank you.
Accept.
That's okay. Just that sentence.
Okay.
So I just want to go back to this first part. Thank you, Miguel, for reading this first paragraph, right? So what do we understand? What do you think Martin Luther King is saying with this very first paragraph? How he's introducing this essay or this talk. What is he saying about oppressed people and freedom? Or maybe how do they deal with being oppressed? I'm going to highlight the sentence. I'm going to give it. Right, do you see that sentence? So it says that in every movement toward freedom, some of the oppressed prefer to remain oppressed, right? The word that Miguel was looking at in the first sentence that says acquiesce, right? That word, what that word means is go along with, right? To give in, to go along with what is happening. So he says oppressed people deal with their oppression in three characteristic ways. The first way, one way is acquiesce, right? They resign themselves to their doom. They go along with it, right? He says that in every movement toward freedom, some of the oppressed prefer to remain oppressed. And then he gives us this example from the Bible, right? If any of you are familiar with the Bible, one of the stories in the Bible is about Moses trying to free the Hebrew slaves from Egypt, right? And it's saying that almost 2,800 years ago, Moses let out the children of Israel from slavery of Egypt, right? Because they were slaves in Egypt. And he says to free them to the promised land. And then, but he soon discovered that the slaves do not always want to be welcome, not always welcome the deliverers, right? The people who are trying to help them get out of slavery. They become accustomed to being slaves, right? They would rather bear, and that was the other word, bear means take it, right? In this case, they would rather take the ills they have, right? And then he makes a reference to Shakespeare because he's being literary, right? Shakespeare pointed out, the flee to others than that they not know of. They prefer the flesh pots of Egypt, right? Their dominators, and to the ordeals of emancipation, right? To the struggle, right? Because even becoming emancipated, there's some struggle. And then he says, a few years ago in the slum areas of Atlanta, a Negro guitarist used to sing, and he's using kind of like slang. And he says been, but it's like the word is been, right? Been down so long that down don't bother me. Like I've been, you know, like there was a thought like I've been poor so long that, you know, being poor is just, I'm used to it, right? It is, and I'm not going to do anything about it. I just rather, and to not be poor is going to take up so much work. I'm just not going to do it. I'll just be poor, right? So he's talking about that. So the first paragraph is saying, you know, there's three ways of meeting oppression. One way he's saying that is acquiescence, like to go along with it, to not fight it, to not wake waves, to accept being oppressed. And he says that he calls it a negative freedom, right? Because that is a choice. And if you decide you don't want to do it, you can just keep living your life in that way, right? But he says, but that's not the way out. So if you want to stay oppressed, I guess that's what you would do. But he says, but this is not the way out. All right, Miguel, do you want to read a little more and then I'll switch it to someone else?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
But this is not the way out. The way out. To accept passively an unjust system is to cooperate with that system. Thereby, the oppressed become as evil as the oppressor. Non-cooperation with evil is as much as moral obligation as is cooperation with good. The oppressed must never allow the conscience
Yes.
of the oppressor to slumber. Religion reminds every man that he is his brother keeper. To accept injustice or segregation passively is to say to the oppressor that his actions are normally right. It is a way of following his conscience to follow asleep. At this moment, the oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper. So acquiescence, while often the easier way, is not the moral way. It is the way of the coward. The Negro cannot win the respect of the oppressor by acquiescing.
Acquiescing. I know it's a hard word.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Acquiescing. Yeah.
Mhm.
He merely increases the oppressor, arrogance, and contempt. Acquiescence is interpreted as proof of the Negro's inferiority. The Negro cannot win the respect of the white people of the South or the peoples of the world. Sorry. Is he willing to sell the future of his children for his personal and immediate comfort and safety?
Thank you, Miguel. So
I'm
this,
sorry.
no, that's good. I'm gonna show you. Here's this word, everyone, and it's kind of one of those words that has a lot of vowels in it. And you're like, what? How do you pronounce that? So it's actually if you break it down, I'm gonna make it bigger. I'm gonna make the word just bigger so that everybody can see it because it's an important word in the essay, right? That Martin Luther King is making this case. I'm gonna make it big, right? Acquiescence. So it's right? If you let me put the words that I don't know how to put a little dot. I'll put a dash. So the way you pronounce it is acquiescence, right? So you just so you can break it down. So when you see it, sometimes you got to slow down with it. It's one of those words in the English language. It's just a mouthful, but it's acquiescence. That's how it's. I'm going to make it small, and I'll just leave it like that for now. It doesn't look like that in Blackboard because this is a Blackboard just has the regular one. Let me make it 12 point again, but maybe I'll put this one up there. So the second paragraph that that Miguel read is we're still talking about the title is the 3 ways of meeting oppression. And so the first way is by going along with it, right? And that means just not fighting it, becoming accustomed to it, right? Not going along with it, and almost like been down so long, it don't bother me. I'm just used to it. I'm accustomed to it. I'm not going to fight it. It wins, right? Then the second paragraph is still talking about that same one way, right? Okay. If you, David is offering more with pronunciation, but we'll do that. I'll get to the word. The second paragraph is saying almost a consequence, right? The second paragraph is talking about, well, if you don't fight your oppressor, you don't let them know that you feel oppressed, right? Here it goes, here's to accept passively an unjust system is to cooperate with that system. That means if the oppressor is saying, I'm going to prevent you from achieving anything, and you say, okay, I'm going to go with it, you therefore are a part of perpetuating that, making that continue to happen, right? So thereby the oppressed, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll come right back to it so I can see you all, or see some of you. So the idea is that so there's 2 things, right? The first way of meeting oppression is to say, I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to go along with it. I'm going to acquiesce. That means I'm going to give in, go along with the situation. And I am going to, and I'm used to it, right? And then Martin Luther King is saying, though, in addition to you saying, I'm not going to fight it, there is a participation you're doing. You're doing something to participate in that activity. And by allowing your oppressor and not objecting to it, it's empowering that oppressor to continue doing the oppression, right? They can still keep doing oppression. They're like, well, he's not complaining and they're going to let me do it and she doesn't care and I'm going to just keep being my oppressive self. So he's saying that there is so Gil going along gives power to the oppressor. And then on top of that says, well, what about your kids? And what about the people in your community? And this oppression that is affecting you is not just affecting you, it's going to affect your next generation and it's going to affect your neighbor. And so he says in religion, because Martin Luther King was a preacher, I didn't talk a lot about him or anything about him, but I'm making assumptions that we know who he is. But Martin Luther King, I'll just pause for a minute, was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement, right? It was like almost the most prominent leader of the civil rights movement. There were other people, right? There were other women, there were other men that were involved with pushing that needle. But Martin Luther King was particularly front and center of the civil rights movement. In the civil rights movement, I love that it calls it civil rights, because there's something civil, there's something respectful about what he was asking for. And it wasn't asking for, he and all of us weren't asking for something that was beyond humanity, right? So he was the civil rights. So Martin Luther King, but he was a preacher. Like, he used to preach in a church. He comes from a family of preachers and of church people. And so he believed in peace, and he believed in love, and he believed in that being applied to everybody. And he knew, just same way as Baldwin knew, said, something is not up, right? The same way as Sojourner Truth knew, something is not up. If society is telling me that women should be treated that way, and I'm a woman, something is not matched up. James Baldwin saying, if society is saying that that I am not a full human, right? And I know that I am, or that I'm ignorant, or that I'm a danger, I know who I am. That's not who I am. So something is up. So Martin Luther King is saying the same thing. Something is up, right? So he's saying, so there's one way to deal with oppression, is to say, go along with it. And if you go along with it, maybe you might be feeling like, I'm not going to fight it, I'm just going to be here, but that your activity has a repercussion, has an action. And one action is that it's, one, letting the oppressor know that they could just do whatever they want, and two, what it's doing is it's telling, it's not really taking care of each other, right? It's not you taking care of your children, you taking care of your family, of your neighbor, right? If everybody's in this oppressed situation, there's something, he says that's not the way out, right? So he's letting that. So that's the first part. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen so we can read about the second way that we meet oppression. Okay, let's see, here we go, a second way. All right, will someone else volunteer to read the second way? I'll pause for only one more moment. Anyone else? Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll read. A second way that oppressed people sometimes deal with oppression is to resort to physical violence and corroding hatred. A violence that often brings about momentary results, sorry. Nations have frequently won their independence in battle, but in spite of temporary victories, the violence never brings permanent peace. It solves no social problem. It merely creates new and more complicated ones. Violence, I'm going to just get rid of that for, it's probably from something, right? Violence as a way of achieving racial justice is both impractical and immoral. It is impractical because, okay, let me pause. So the first paragraph, he says, so the first way is by going along with it. I'm just going to not fight it. He goes, a second way that oppressed people sometimes deal with oppression is to resort to physical violence and corroding hatred, right? So this is like violence, and he's saying, right, that's the second way. So violence as a way of achieving racial justice is both impractical and immoral. It is impractical because it is descending spiral, ending in destruction for all. The old law of an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. It is immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than win his understanding. It seeks to annihilate rather than to convert. Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. It destroys community and makes brotherhood impossible. It leaves society in monologue rather than dialogue. Violence ends by defeating itself. It creates bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers. A voice echoes through time, saying to every potential Peter, put up your sword. History is cluttered with the wreckage of nations that fail to follow his command. Okay, so the second one, we're not done with it yet because he's doing more. And I just want to point out what he's doing. He's making a point, right? Here, he makes it, in this case, that one way that the oppressed deal with it is with physical and corroding hatred. And as with any good essay, you got to back it up, right? You got to give up details, you got to give up experiences so that the reader can get deeper and deeper to what you're saying. And so what he's saying is that it often brings about momentary results, right? That sometimes violence brings out a result, something happens, but it is not lasting. right? So nations have frequently won their independence in battle, but in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. It solves no social problems. It merely creates new ones, new and more complicated ones. And this violence is a way of achieving racial justice. He feels like it's both impractical and immoral. It is impractical, and he tells you why, right? It's impractical because it's descending, it's a spiral of destruction for everybody. And the old law, he goes back to the Bible, of an eye for an eye. People have probably heard that before. Eye for an eye leaves everybody blind, right? So it is immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than win his understanding, right? So in violence, hold on a second, let me come back. So he's making the argument that when you're in violence, right, there's a winner and there's a loser. So somebody is going to, right? And what it does with the winner, it just makes him feel more emboldened, more, right? And the loser feels bitter, right? So he's like, that dynamic doesn't work. Like somebody won, but I don't think anybody won, really. So let me continue with what he's saying, right? Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred, right? He goes back, that violence thrives on hatred rather love. Like violence isn't about love, it's about hatred. He says it destroys community and makes brotherhood impossible. It leaves society in monologue. Monologue is one person talking rather than dialogue, rather than people having a conversation. Violence ends by defeating itself, right? It creates bitterness in the survivors, right? And brutality in the destroyers. So the winners, the destroyers, become more brutal, and the survivors become bitter. A voice echoes through time saying to every potential Peter, put up your sword. History is cluttered with the wreckage of nations that failed to follow this. So if the American Negro, I'm reading now from the essay, and other victims of oppression succumb to the temptation of using violence in the struggle for freedom, future generations will be the recipients of the desolate night of bitterness, and our chief legacy to them will be an endless reign of meaningless chaos. Violence is not the way, right? So I'm gonna pause for a moment. Whoops, backspace, okay. Come back to the class before we read the third way, and the third way and the conclusion, right? So Martin Luther King is saying, so yeah, violence happens in the world, but I don't really think that it really solves an issue. What it ends up doing is somebody wins something for a little while, and maybe they're the victor, right? Not like Valerio, that's a different kind of victor. But it's somebody's the victor, but then it leaves that person in the state of being a brutality, and then the person they win is a state of bitterness, right? So that there isn't about people coming together. He said it doesn't create dialogue. It's not about that kind of relationship. So he feels that violence is not the way. Now I'm going to pause for a minute, not to go straight too much from the thing. So something to know about Martin Luther King, that was his modus operandi. That's the way he operated, right? He was like, I want to create change, but I want to use peace, right? And at the same time, there was a very famous civil rights leader called Malcolm X. And they were both important because Malcolm X kind of was like, well, I don't know about that. He says, I think we got to get it by any means necessary. Like whatever we got to do, we got to do. And violence, is not off the table, right? Because sometimes we have to use force, right? Martin Luther King didn't feel that. Martin Luther King was a pacifist. I mean, somebody who likes with the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean is called the Atlantic. Pacific is supposed to be a peaceful ocean, Pacific, but it's not. But anyway, Martin Luther King is a pacifist, right? So he was a person that believed in peace, and he didn't believe in violence. So this position that he's taking is his position, right? And I think before I read the last part, I think that's one of the important things that I think in this class that I was trying to enforce is that for us to develop the skill to understand how someone else is thinking and what someone else is saying. And that's what I mean by the essays that we've gotten have always been like, what does the author say? What is trying to be conveyed? What are they saying? And not that your opinions and your feelings and everything that's going on with you is not important. That is important, but you develop a skill, and this is almost like a listening skill, to hear what the other person is saying. So in this case, whether you agree with the violence is not the way, or you think the violence is the way, important but not relevant to the conversation right now. Right now, it is saying, what is Martin Luther King saying in this speech? So far he's saying two things. One, there's three ways, well, let's say three things. Three, right? One, that the three ways, he's outlining three ways that the oppressor deals with being oppressed, right? And the first one he gave us was like acquiescence, right? You give in, you don't fight it, and then that has its own series of repercussions, right? The second way he's saying that you can, the people that deal with oppression is violence, like we fight, right? And he's saying in the violent act, I don't agree with that, because what ends up happening is this: somebody gets beaten, right? What if even if the oppressed, right, rise up and beat down their oppressor, that still creates a dynamic of somebody being bitter and not having a dialogue. So he says, so violence ends up with someone being brutal and somebody being bitter, that it doesn't create the space for dialogue and discussion. It isn't a coming together, is a different type of separation, right? So going along with it has its repercussions. Fighting it, he disagrees with, has its repercussions, okay? So let's look at the third way and then see how he concludes this essay, all right? So the third way is the third way open to oppressed people in their request for freedom is the way of nonviolent resistance. Like the synthesis in Hegelian philosophy, the principle of nonviolent resistance seeks to reconcile the truths of two opposites, acquiescence and violence, while avoiding the extremes and immoralities of both. I'm going to say that again, right? Because here he gets kind of heady, and I'll break down some of these things for you, right? So he says the third way, there's a third way, which you're going to get the feeling is the way he thinks, the way he's going, right? He's making an argument. So the third way to open to oppress, like one of the options, right? The third way open to in their quest for freedom is the way of nonviolent resistance, right? That there is a way that's nonviolent, that's resisting, right? So it's not acquiescing, but it's nonviolent. Because like the synthesis in Hegelian philosophy, the principle of nonviolent resistance seeks to reconcile the truths of two opposites, acquiescence and violence. So it looks like it's trying to find if there's a way to, let me just make a little space here, that would help, I think, visually with this. So reconcile is like bring together the truths of two things that seem opposite, like giving in and violence, while avoiding extremes and immoralities of both, right? So the extreme of acquiescence and it's the extreme of violence is avoiding that, and the immoralities of acquiescence and the immoralities of violence, right? So another way. The nonviolent resistor agrees with the person. One second, let me just hit something in the chat. All right. I'm going to read Victor's thing in a moment. Victor just gave us something, and if you can read it, it's fine too. But so the nonviolent resistor agrees with the person who acquiesces, right? That one should not be physically aggressive toward his opponent, but he balances the equation by agreeing with the person of violence that evil must be resisted. He avoids the non-resistance of the former and the violence of resistance of the latter. With nonviolent resistance, no individual group need submit to any wrong or need anyone resort to violence in order to right a wrong, right? So, so I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to explain that a little more, and then I'm going to read Victor's comment, right? So he's saying, okay, acquiescence, just giving in and not doing anything, they're the ones that are like, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to say nothing. I'm just going to go along with it because that's not good. I'm going to give you all these reasons. Then the other one, he says, okay, the other way you could do is you could be violent. Well, you know, and then if you're violent, all these things, it's immoral, you hurt people, all this kind of stuff. So he's saying, so I don't want to, it's immoral to be violent, to hurt people, and it's immoral not to do anything. So he says, I want to take the immoralities of both and take those out, right? But the idea of resisting, like not being violent, I want to take that from the first group because they're acquiescing, they're not violent. And the idea of resisting from the second group, I want to take that too. So there is a way, he's saying, that you can resist but not be violent, right? So that's the idea, simple, the idea of non-resistant, non-violent resistance. right? It's simply the idea of like another way to show resistance that's not violence. And so I'm going to just say, just philosophically, we have a lot of tools in this world, right? We have a lot of tools of communication. We have a lot of tools of loving. We have a lot of tools of having fun. Like the way one person has, that's not only one way to have fun. There's not only one way to love. There's not only one way to resolve issues, right? And so that's what Martin Luther King is saying by non-violence resistance, is that, do you think those are the only two ways? There's another way, right? And I'm going to give you another way in which to look at it. And I want to pause and read what Victor wrote, because Victor always writes such wonderful things in the chat.
If you want.
Okay.
Yeah. So Martin Luther King and Malcolm X both recognized the many acts of violence perpetrated onto communities of color. MLK's aim was to alleviate this violence by demonstrating the effectiveness of peace, sit-ins, boycotts, and civil protests, while Malcolm X wanted to defend his community against the state's ongoing violence, which became the primary goal of the Black Panthers later after his assassination. And this could be seen as the policing of police. At the immediately after the civil rights era, there was an almost increase of not only KKK leadership and participants, but also a lot of those KKK, members were also part of the police force, which kind of created a lot of a lot more systemic issues of policing. So the Black Panthers' goal was to police the police, was to defend their community against these
violent oppressors.
Yeah, violent oppressors. Yeah, exactly. So like it's not there was a sense of violence, especially very early on into Malcolm X's like philosophy, but he's a very complex character that if anyone ever wants to look into, I think it's very interesting. Very complex person.
Thanks for that history lesson. I know I'm with you, Victor. A lot of times I want to just keep talking about all this stuff, but
it's hard not to.
Yeah, we'll get back to the essay, but just keep that in mind, what Victor was saying, that, and I think understand that also change happens a lot of different ways, right? That a lot of contributing factors. I mean, one of the people that we did not get to read in this class this year was Audre Lorde, and she and James Baldwin often had a little bit of a battle, right? Because James Baldwin wanted to make change by being in the decision-making room. And she was like, you could have all those powerful people. I don't want to deal with them. I want to deal with my neighbors. I want to deal with my community. I want to deal with my women so that we can build. So he was trying to create change from the top down, and she was trying to do it from the bottom up, from the community. But they both, just think about that. So if you're creating change in different ways, they both contributed to the change. Back to the essay, right? So not that we went far away, we're talking about related topics, but back to the essay. So he's right now making a case, right, for non-violent resistance. So he's saying you don't have to take it, you don't have to live oppressed, but you also don't have to take up, you also don't have to be violent. And so remember, that was, again, I keep repeating, Martin Luther King's position, his philosophy and his values, right? And I'm going to share the screen so that I get through the essay. Yes, because I'm almost at the end, right? So it seems to me that this method that must guide the action, he seems to me that this is the method that must guide the actions of the Negro in the present crisis in race relations. Through nonviolent resistance, the Negro will be able to rise to the noble height of opposing the unjust system while loving the perpetrators of the system, right? This is like rough, right? What he's saying here. The Negro must work passionately and unrelentingly for full stature as a citizen, right? That's a bottom line. But he must not use inferior methods to gain it. He must never come to terms with falsehood, malice, hate, or destruction. Nonviolent resistance makes it possible for the Negro to remain in the South and struggle for his rights. The Negro's problem will not be solved by running away. He cannot listen to the glib suggestions of those who would urge him to migrate en masse to other sections of the country. By grasping his great opportunity in the South, he could make a lasting contribution to the moral strength of the nation and set a sublime example of courage for generations yet unborn. So I'm going to give a little bit of context to that, and then just have a little more. We'll give a whole other page. Okay, great. A little bit of context. I was going to come into the class for it, right? So he's saying here that in addition that the way to go is through nonviolent resistance, and he's saying here basically in this paragraph that that there was this migration there in the South. It was much more difficult in the South than it was in the North, and there was people that were like, screw it, leave the South, come to the North. That you have to deal with it not at all. I mean, because you have to deal with the North, but it's not as bad, right? So, and he's saying, no, I think you should stay in the South and keep resisting in the South, because if we can change the South, it's going to be creating bigger change for, he says, generations of yet unborn. By nonviolent resistance, the Negro can also enlist all men of goodwill in his struggle for equality. The problem is not purely a racial one with Negroes set against whites. In the end, it is not a struggle between people at all, but a tension between justice and injustice. Nonviolent resistance is not aimed against oppressors, but against oppression. Under its banner, consciousness, not racial group, are enlisted. So what he's doing in this paragraph is brilliant, right? He's let me stop sharing. So in that paragraph, he's taking, basically pointing a finger of blame and saying, okay, it's almost like if those of you who are religious, they say like, hate the sin, not the sinner, right? So he's saying it's necessarily not the oppressors we need to hate, it's oppression that we have to hate. And I think he believes everybody can get behind the idea that nobody wants to be oppressed, right? I mean, that's why some powerful people keep exerting their power, because they experience any minimizing of that power as pushing back as oppression, but nobody wants to feel that sense of oppression. So he's saying that, so he makes this really interesting argument to say, it's actually, again, the oppressor is not. He even says, love the oppressor. And you're like, what? But he's saying, yeah, because you remember, he's a man of God, right? He's a man of God, and God is like, he says, I don't know, God told me to love everybody. And even the person who hates me, I got to figure out a way to love that person. But what I don't have to love the oppression. I don't have to love the violence. I don't have to love what they do. So in that paragraph, he's taking the attention off this idea of the oppressor only being related to a person, but more of their activity. Like and then that's one of the things that we can get behind. So if the Negro is to achieve the goal of integration, he must organize himself into a militant and nonviolence mass movement. All three elements are indispensable, right? The movement for equality and justice can only be a success if it has both a mass and militant character. Militant meaning not refusing that it's out, that it's definitely resistance, right? And that it's by many, right? And he's saying, so it's not about only Blacks standing up for this, because the idea of oppression, of keeping somebody down, everybody should be able to get down with that. So Blacks, whites, Latinos, Asians, everybody get behind saying no oppression, right? So he says, and we need a big group in which to do it. So the movement for equality and justice can only be a success if it has both mass and militant character. The barriers to be overcome require both. Nonviolence is an imperative in order to bring about ultimate community. So a mass movement of militant quality that is not at the same time committed to nonviolence tends to generate conflict, right? So he's saying, he's using debate tactics, right? So you could have a mass movement of militant quality, but it's not related to violence, to nonviolence, and he says violence could create more conflict, which in turn breeds anarchy, right? His ideas. The support of the participants and the sympathy of the uncommitted are both uninhibited by the threat that bloodshed will engulf the community. This reaction in turn encourages the opposition to threaten and resort to force. When, however, the mass movement repudiates violence while moving resolutely toward its goal, its opponents are revealed as the instigators, right? And the practitioners of violence if it occurs. Then public support is magnetically attracted to the advocates of nonviolence, while those who employ violence are literally disarmed by overwhelming sentiment against their stand. So in this paragraph, he says a lot, but I'm going to read a little bit of again, right? He says, well, maybe the whole thing. A mass movement of militant quality is not the same, is not at the same time committed to nonviolence, tends to generate conflict, which in turn breeds anarchy. The support of the participants and the sympathy of the uncommitted are both inhibited by the threat that bloodshed will engulf the community. This reaction in turn encourages the opposition. So I'm gonna come into the class for a minute because my thing's doing a weird thing. So what he's saying in that paragraph, he's saying, okay, if there's a big group, right, and you do violence, what it's going to do, it's going to create violence. It's going to be like the other side. If somebody says, I'm coming for you with my violence and my guns and my knives, the other side is like going to be, oh yeah, we're going to defend ourselves. We're going to get our guns and knives. And then it just creates a big clash. But he says, if we take a nonviolent mass, right, and we say, we're going to come and we're going to do a protest, we're going to come and we're going to let you know, right, that the other group is going to be like, you're going to come, I'm going to get my sticks and rocks and guns and I'm going to come for you. And if the group that's coming without the violence is met by the group that has the violence, and the violence is inflicted, what could result, or what will result, he says, I said could, he says will, what will result is the world will look at that and they will look at the people with the doing violence against people who are not being violent, who are being non-violent resistors, and they would look sympathetically in the non-violent resistors and look judgmentally on the ones who are doing the violence, right? So he's saying that. There's a film called Selma, and that was a very important moment in history where Martin Luther King did organize a march and where the people in the march were attacked and beaten and clubbed, and it was very violent and people were killed and harmed, and it was just and it was one of the moments, a turning point in the country, right, in the civil rights movement, that they saw that people just want their rights and their freedom, and they're not going out there to like shoot people down to get it. They just want to demand it and demand it respectfully, and the way they were treated was bad, right? The way in which the oppressor came at the oppressed in that moment was like people were not having it. So it's a cool film, not cool, I mean, it's a tough film, but it's a well-made film called Selma, and it's about that moment in history that illustrates this paragraph of what Martin Luther King is saying in it. Yes, thank you. Yeah, right, he's being specific. The oppressors in this case are white supremacy. I want to say also when Victor was speaking earlier, when he was saying, you know, the rise of the KKK and that, you know, they were also in the police, that this is relating to the readings that we were doing, right? Because it's, you know, Carol Anderson was saying that with Right Rage, that every time that there is an advancement, there is a backlash, right? There's a resurgence against that, and very often a violent one that occurs. So let me finish reading the article because we have, and I know it's a lot of information. I want to finish the article before we take we're going to take a shorter break today, not take a 20-minute one. Okay, so only through a nonviolent approach can the fears of the white community be mitigated. A guilt-ridden white minority lives in fear that if the Negro should ever attain power, he would act without restraint or pity to revenge the injustices and brutality of the years. It is something like a parent who continually mistreats a son. One day, that parent raises his hand to strike the son only to discover that the son is now as tall as he. That parent is suddenly afraid, fearful that that son will use his new physical power to repay his parents for all the blows of the past. The Negro, once a helpless child, has now grown up politically, culturally, and economically. Many white men fear retaliation. The job of the Negro is to show them that they have nothing to fear, that the Negro understands and forgives and is ready to forget the past. He must convince the white man that all he seeks is justice for both himself and the white man. A mass movement exercising nonviolence is an object lesson in power under discipline, a demonstration to the white community that if such a movement attained a degree of strength, it would use its power creatively, not vengefully. Right? So he's saying, you know, Martin Luther King is saying in these paragraphs that one of the things that this nonviolence has to show, in addition, is also not retaliation, right? That one of the things is gonna, the movement for equality is not about we want to get into power or we want equality, and then we're gonna mess you up. Then we're gonna do to you everything you did to me. And he does that analogy with the parent and child, that if a parent was abusive to a child, and the parent is, of course, a big person, or let's say father and son, the father is big and he's strong and he's a full adult and he could do things to that little boy body that, you know, by pushing or hitting or punishing or restraining, that at one point that little boy grows up, and he becomes a man. And so now the father has an opponent, right? And so then the father fears the son is going to do something back to him. So he's saying that is what's going on with, in this case, white society. They think, oh, well, now that the Negro child, right, metaphorically, that Negroes have grown up politically and culturally, that now what they're going to do is, he says, I just want to acknowledge that that is the fear that they feel. And we just have to let them know, again, Martin Luther King's idea is that that's not who we are. We want to use our power, here it is, creatively, not vengefully. We want to get power, not to be vengeful and get back at you, but to be creative. So nonviolence can touch men where the law cannot reach them. When the law regulates behavior, it plays an indirect part in molding public sentiment, right? When the law regulates behavior, it plays an indirect part in molding public sentiment, right? The enforcement of the law is itself a form of peaceful persuasion, but the law needs help. The courts can order desegregation of the public schools, but what can be done to mitigate the fears, to disperse the hatred, the violence, and irrationality gathered around school integration, to take the initiatives out of the hands of racial demagogues, to release respect for the law? In the end, for laws to be obeyed, men must believe they are right. Here, nonviolence comes in as the ultimate form of persuasion. It is the method which seeks to implement the just law by appealing to the conscience of the great decent majority who, through blindness, fear, pride, or rationality, have allowed their consciousness to sleep. The nonviolent resistor can summarize their message in the following simple terms. We will take the direct action against injustice without waiting for the other agencies to act. We will not obey unjust laws or submit to unjust practices. We will do this peacefully, openly, cheerfully, because our aim is to persuade. We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community at peace with itself. We will try to persuade with our words, but if our words fail, we will try to persuade with our acts. We will always be willing to talk and seek fair compromise. But we are ready to suffer when necessary and even risk our lives to become witnesses to the truths as we see it. The way of nonviolence means a willingness to suffer and sacrifice. It may mean going to jail. If such is the case, the resistor must be willing to fill the jailhouses of the South. It may even mean physical death, but if the physical death is the price that a man must pay to free his children and his white brethren from a permanent death of the spirit, then nothing could be more redemptive. Okay. So the ending, he keeps talking about the idea of nonviolence, right? So one of the other concepts, I'm going to come into class in a minute. So one of the other concepts that he's saying is that that laws, right, that you can pass a law, but that's only part of it, right? That because they pass, because Brown versus the Board of Education won, right, to desegregate schools, that didn't solve the issue, right? It solves part of the issue, but not the entire issue. That because the Civil Rights Act, the last one was passed in 1964, didn't make everything equal, right? Like racism still exists. So he says he believes that the way to continue changing is by resisting nonviolently, right? Like to not take it, keep resisting and keep pushing for change, and do it with big groups, do it en masse, do it loudly if you need to, that we're going to use words and we're going to have a conversation. But if that doesn't work, we have to find other ways to be loud and big and make the change. And then the very ending of the essay, he says that he says that in order to do that, one of the things that we have to face is that you have to be willing to sacrifice. And because we're protesting against sometimes the law in our areas, and if we use Victor's offering to the class, that if there were members of the KKK and they rose, and those are the police officers, you know what the beliefs of the KKK are, right? They don't see Black people as equal. They don't see them as poor people. They feel like they should be powerful over them. So sometimes the people we're opposing might be resorting to violence against us. And so, or, you know, in certain cases, they were trying to pass laws that made it challenging for us to do the things that we need to do. And he says, in those cases, you have to be willing to sacrifice or go to jail, fill the jailhouses, he says, if you need to, with resistors, or that you might be willing to die only if the price is that freedom is granted to the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. So, so the three ways that he says you can meet oppression is by going along with it, acquiescence, right? Go along, and that has a whole list of problems according to him. Like, one is that you let you reinforce your oppressor's right to oppress you, that you don't take care of yourself, you're not taking care of community if you just go along. The other way is to take violence. And he says, violence, I'm not good with violence because violence doesn't really bring people together. Violence brings people apart. Maybe you win for one battle, but you don't win the war, right? There is no war winning with violence. And he says the other way is by non-violence resistance. And he makes a whole case of all the reasons why, the ideas behind that, and then ends it with, I stand behind this so much that I am willing to die for it. And in some ways he did, right? In some ways, he was assassinated, he was assassinated for his ideas, right? So, and so we are the generations that he said, I will die for you, but now we got to do something. The change has to continue to happen. So, all right, it is 2:04. And so I think it is time for us to take a little bit of break, and I'm going to go get some water because I've been talking. I want to thank you, Miguel, for helping me read at the beginning. And I went through the rest of it. I was planning to stop for the third one and ask someone else, but I just went through it so that we can get through the entire essay. What I want you to do is take a break and always stretch or drink some water or go to the bathroom. We will come back. We'll do a short break. We'll come back at 2:15. Because I want to talk more and I want to make sure I understand it, and I get a sense Victor understands it, but we're not writing the essays. You're going to write the essays. So it's really important that you understand this essay and that you ask questions. If not, then I'm going to assume you know, and of course I'll put this lecture online, and you can watch it again. But now that you have me here live and Victor, because Victor's an amazing resource that we can talk about that. And then I'm going to share with you a little prompt and ask you to begin writing something, and then we'll talk about how we can construct an essay off of that. So it's 2:05. I'll see you all at 2:15. No, we do not have another assignment due at home. This is it for the semester. You don't have anything else due. Victor's also giving you some advice in the chat. 2 extra minutes to kind of finish something while I was eating today. I had a little bit of yogurt with some fruit. One of my favorite things. There's like right now you can get pomegranates, so it's great to throw some pomegranates in some yogurt and eat it up. But that's what I scoffed down quickly while I answered a phone call and a text. So quick summary, and as we get back from our break, so we read Martin Luther King's 3 Ways to Meet Oppression, and that is this final. Just to be clear, because I got a question in the chat. That the essay we just did, I didn't do it just because I liked it. I didn't do it just because I wanted to do something today with you. I did it because we are preparing for the final exam. The final exam will be on that essay. So it's important, like I said, that not Victor and I know it. It's great for us to know it. We'll use it in our lives, but it's important for you to know it because the way it's going to play a role in your life right now is that you're going to write an essay about it. Not right now, but we're going to do something right now, an exercise together. But so the next thing I want to do is, well, first I want to pause and say, any thoughts, any questions, anything that was not clear, any reflections, like maybe you say, I like that idea, I don't like that idea, you know, of this idea of nonviolence, or I could, you know, I can get down with that. Any impressions, any thoughts, any questions, anything at all about the essay? No, I pause because people need to think, and people use the chat and all kinds of things, or ways of communicating, except not telepathy. Can't do that yet. So people are clear that, you know, okay, great. So I'm just going to say, oh, the question, David, was that if you had any questions about the essay or anything that we discussed in the first part of class related to the essay, or if you had an impression, you know, like if you understood something or maybe it spoke to you, anything like that. That's the question.
Yeah, I have a question, Professor. The information about Martin Luther King is going to be posted on Blackboard tonight.
Say that again.
The information about Martin Luther King, we can check it out in Blackboard tonight.
Yes, you mean the essay we just read?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. So let me share the screen. So if you go to, I put it there today. So I realized I thought I put it there already. So this is what we're going to do next. I'm going to show you this next thing. This is a sample of the prompt, but I want to make sure that you have this. Okay, so here, if you go to, this is Blackboard. So now the final exam is here. It's a folder. And so right now it just has the reading. So if you go to the folder, you can see the essay that we just read. So you can certainly read it and become familiar with it. Okay, any other questions? So if not, you got a little preview, but I'm going to go back to that page. So I want us to look at what the actual prompt is going to, this is not the prompt, but what the actual prompt will look like, right? This is an example. So at midnight on 11:15, a prompt will be live, will be there for you to see. And this will be it will be the prompt that you will answer. And I'm going to repeat what you're seeing here. This is not the prompt. This is not what the exam says, but it is formatted in such a way that is similar to that, right? So the thing that will be added to that folder, unless there's another folder, I can send you instructions for something else, will be this, right? You will see this thing that will say All Souls Community College, English Department, English 110 final exam, even though we're English 100, it's the same, you're getting the same 100 and 110 are both classes that do, they're both the intro, the first composition class. And so you both get the same exam, okay? So it's gonna say, first thing you're gonna see are writing directions. And it's gonna say, write your response in an essay with an introduction, body paragraphs that develop on your thesis, and a conclusion, right? So this is not new, right? It's going to write an essay, has introduction, has body paragraphs that develop on your thesis, right? Your thesis is in the introduction, and a conclusion. Make use of both paraphrase, right? And we've been doing a lot of summary, right? And direct quotes, and you can use the actual quotes. We've done both. Giving attribution to the author when using direct quotes, right? So when you give quotes, you make sure, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You must attach your response either as a PDF or Microsoft Word file, right? So in Turnitin, there's two ways you can submit it, and that's as a PDF or Microsoft Word file, right? So that is the instructions, right? It doesn't tell you anything else, right? But you're going to lay it out in MLA format. You're going to put your name, you're going to put my name, you're going to do all that kind of stuff in it. But it's saying you have to you have to just write an essay, right? The first part. And these are the parts of an essay that we always have been doing, and you have been doing all semester. Intro, oops, hold on a second. Let me just make sure that's not so blurry. Intro, body paragraph, and a conclusion, right? And a thesis in the introduction. And you're going to paraphrase, you can use quotes, and you're going to do, you're going to give attribution to the author when using direct quotes. Here it says you must attach your response as either as a PDF or Microsoft Word file. That's because the Turnitin, which I'm going to show you that in a minute, those are two of the formats that it accepts, right? And so those of you who have Word, that's fine. But I think in those of you who are working in Google Docs, I've shown you how you can convert it or download the document as a Word document, but you can also download it as a PDF. You have the choice, right? Word documents can also be converted to PDFs, right? So all of this first part, the writing directions, is just giving you instruction. The second part is a writing prompt, and this is what you will answer. Okay, so not this one. This is not the prompt for the final exam. So don't say, Professor, that prompt you showed us in class, that wasn't on the final exam. Of course, because I can't show you the prompt for the final exam. But the prompt for the final exam will relate to the essay in a similar way. The prompt that you're now seeing does. Hold on one second, I'm taking a sip. So the writing prompt says, in his essay, 3 Ways of Meeting Oppression, right? That's the essay we just read. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. advocates for nonviolent resistance to unjust laws, right? He does that. Describe the way King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression. So what is this? What is it asking? Can somebody tell me what do you have to, what's the thing you have to do? What do you have to answer? What is this question asking you to do? Yeah, what is it asking you to do? What do you have to answer? Because the first step of writing a successful final exam essay is, well, I should say the next step, you have to read the article, be familiar with it, but the next step is understanding this. What is it asking you to do? Does anybody have any idea in these 2 sentences, what is this that your essay has to be about?
So I guess it's like some ways that that we could describe like something that's nonviolent between Martin Luther King and, you know, I guess the things that he did for the injustice, and, you know, just like, I guess like a summary or something that can explain like the situation with Dr. Martin Luther King, and I guess like what he's done throughout, I guess, the article that we will read.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good get. Who's that, Ariel?
Yes.
Yes, I see, I know your voices. Like, I don't know your names, your faces rather, but I know your voices. It's a strange thing. I've never had, that's what the online thing does. So Ariel, that was a good attempt, but I think what this is important, why I want to spend this time looking at the prompt, right? It's because I could understand how you might think that, but this is asking you for something very specific, and it's in the second line. It's asking you, describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression, right? So this is what this prompt is asking you to do. So of course you do have to like summarize when you do the introduction, right? Because you have to do the introduction and say, what is the introduction about when you're crafting an essay? But it's important to read the prompt and understand the vocabulary, right? So it's important for us to break down and say what acquiescence means. It means like give in, right? It's also there's 3 ways of meeting oppression, but this is the first way he talks about meeting oppression, right? In the article, if we go to the article, the very first way of meeting oppression, right? He says, one way is acquiescence. So he's talking about the very first way. And when he says this first way, he's really talking about like, this is not the way to go for all these reasons, right? And so first he describes what it is, and then he describes why it's not the way to go, right? So it's important to understand when you look at the prompt that even though it says, right, all the first part says in his essay, 3 ways of meeting oppression, Dr. Martin Luther King advocates for nonviolent resistance to unjust laws. That's what it says that he's doing in the essay. Like he's making an argument, right? He's advocating for nonviolent laws. That's an objective statement. And a statement is, this is what the essay is about. Now it's saying, describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression. So this sentence assumes you've read it, right? So that you know that acquiescence is one of the ways that he described as meeting it. And it's saying, describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to go. Ariel, how do you understand? How did you receive that? Given that you offered something and I redirected you to what the
I understand it more better now than I did before. Like I understand like the concept and where we have to go at this point.
Right, because it's asking for something very specific. It's saying describe the way that King does not think that acquiescence is the way to go. So if you were going to do that, right, you have to create a thesis statement, right, for this. But what would be kind of the first things that you would want? And you have to do a thesis statement. You would create an outline, right? Those are an outline, meaning said, all right, so I have to answer this question. Then how do I answer it, right? So if it was even asking you about the second one, describe the way that he thinks violence is not the way to go, right? Whatever it is asking you to do is asking you for something specific, right? If it had said, give us a summary of this article, then you summarize the whole article. But that prompt was asking for something specific. It said, describe the way that he thinks acquiescence is not the way to go, right? And he's very clear on that. So that's a hint that this is going to be part of your thesis statement, right? That describing why he doesn't think acquiescence is the way to go to meet oppression. And then it is 2:30. Okay, so then we'll state. So then, what would be one of the first things you would need to know? You would need to find out from the article. What would you need to know from the article?
The time he talked about the acquiescence.
What do you mean?
Like the definition he gave, basically.
Okay,
right?
That's good. That's good, David. That you have to give it the definition. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to the question. Okay. So you would define it, which is important, right? So say, what is he talking about? Acquiescence. And then what?
State the reason why he disagrees with it.
Bingo. Yes. So then you would need to make a list . So the only way we're going to find that answer is if we look at the reading. So he says, this is not the way out. Because to accept passively an unjust system is to cooperate with that system. Thereby, the oppressed become as evil as the oppressor, right? So he's saying that one way is right here in the first sentence, right? Is that you become, if you don't oppress it, you become as evil as the oppressor, right? I'm just going to copy and paste this into my, as I start outlining, right? What, now let's go back to it. Why might be a second reason why? Gave you the first one. What might be a second one?
Ask your question again. I'm sorry. I was trying to get ready.
Yeah, that's cool.
What was your question again?
Oh, the question, I said one way was that the way being acquiescent or being acquiescent is not the way to go. It's because the oppressed become as evil as the oppressor, right? What's another way? What's another reason why it's not good to be acquiescent?
The oppressor must never allow the consequences of the oppressor to slumber.
Okay, and what would that mean?
I was talking about Mike Beard. I'm sorry.
Say it again. So I heard who was speaking? Was that Joshua?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
he could speak because I was speaking with my Mike Beard the whole time.
Okay. So yes, never allow the conscience of the oppressor to slumber, right? So he's saying, well, you'd have to explain that a little more deeply, but tell me more what you were thinking about that with Joshua. Why is that not good?
Like, in other words, it's not falling through. Like, anything that they're going through is not actually going through if they're like all like in a way not paying attention to what's going on. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, I think you have something here. I'm trying to push you a little bit because you have to be able to explain it, right? So I'm going to copy and paste it, and let's look at that, right? I'm going to copy and paste it and put it over here because that's another reason, right? Right? He's saying that if you're being acquiescent, right, that's not the way to go because acquiescence just lets things continue. And the oppressed, he says, what the acquiescence doesn't do, it doesn't push the oppressor. It allows the oppressor to sleep, right? To just for their brain to just keep doing what they're doing and not push it. There's like a little more nuance, but it's a reason, right? It's saying acquiescence is not good because it just lets the person keep doing what they're doing, right? If we look at each section, right? If we look at different things, ideas, I'll just give you another one, right? It says that the oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper, right? So it's also not good. I'm going to give you that one, right? So, and I'm just going to copy and paste it, right? And put it right here. Oppressed to be his failed his brother's keeper, right? So, so what we're doing is we're creating an outline. We're building the reasons, right? We're answering the question, describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression, right? So we're saying, so let me make a list of the ways that King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression. So, yes, I will. So one is that thereby the oppressed, that you become almost as evil as the oppressor by allowing the oppression okay, so acquiescence, so here's the word acquiescence. And acquiescence means to go along, right? To not fight back, to just kind of lay back and go with the flow. And this person is this, or let's just say the system is holding you back, and you're like, well, you know, let me go to like there's an idea of acquiescence that drives me crazy in my culture, okay? That they say, well, if it's the will of God, si Dios quiera, oh, if whatever, you know, if this happened, lo que pasa, pasa, right? What happens, happens, right? And so that's an idea of acquiescence, that it's not an active, it's letting it happen to you. And in the case of oppression, okay, you got it, good. In the case of oppression, it's not something good. If somebody is showering you with gifts and giving you everything in the world, que pasa, lo que pasa, pasa, right? But if somebody's like oppressing you or something that's probably not the best tactic to take. And so that's what King is saying. King is saying, so the question is saying, describes the way he thinks that is not a good path. Being acquiescence is not the path, right? And so one is that he says, by being like acquiescent, you're almost as bad as the person doing the harm to you because you're allowing this to happen. Then the second reason is that being acquiescent, you cannot let an oppressor slumber. You cannot let their consciousness just slumber and keep going, right? Then a third one I put in there, he says, what about your responsibility to your family, to your brother, your brother's keeper, to your family, to your kids, to the next generation? You're gonna let the oppressor smack you down and keep you down, and then you're gonna let the oppressor keep doing that to your kids and to your grandkids and for all eternity, right? So that's another reason why acquiescence is not good, and there's more, right, in the paragraph, right? But if you're gonna write an essay and you're gonna thinking, let's say I need at least 3 juicy topics that I'm gonna write about that I can explain, those might be, let's just go with those 3 only because I'm looking at the interest of time, right? So, so the next step, once you've gotten all your ideas, and when you're writing yours down, I always encourage students to write several, like to 5, you know, whatever, 4, find another reason. Right, find at least a couple of reasons so that you're not only thinking of these, that you say, oh, maybe reason number 5 is stronger. So I'm gonna go with reason number 5, right? I'm gonna do 1, 2, and 5, because 3, I can't get that. I'm gonna do 1, 3, and 5, because 2, I'm having a little trouble really understanding what I mean by that. And I have to be able to explain myself and explain and articulate it. So I need to find at least 3 strong ideas to write about. But for now, let's just let's play with that. Let's play with the maybe. Let's play with. I'm just for the sake of. Let's play with 2, 3, and 4. Those are going to be the 3 you're going to include in your thesis statement. So I already told you. So now you can start crafting your thesis statement. You could do it this way. You can right. You could say describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression. So one way you could do your thesis statement is. Martin Luther King believes that acquiescence is not the way to meet oppression, right? Because, and then you have your reasons, right? Here, reason number, I forgot what I said I was gonna do. Okay, let's say we're doing, we're gonna do 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so because it allows the conscious strengths of the oppressor to slumber, the oppressed, I'm using the exact words, but we could also express fails to be his brother's keeper. And I'm going to just write another reason, just because I'm playing with the idea of number 4 being another reason, right? So these are the reasons we picked. They come up with 5 we're using. So I craft the thesis statement because the thesis statement is going to be the guide, right? And it says, if you look at the instructions, right, body paragraphs are developed on your thesis, right? So this is my thesis statement, right? Because first let me just rewind, right? We identified what is this asking us? A, describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression. So, okay, so we have to look at the article and say, how does he not think, what is his reasons for why he doesn't think acquiescence is the way to go? And we look at it and we read it, it's like, oh, here's one, oh, here's another one, or here's another one, or here's another one, here's another one. Okay, I got 5. Which are the 3 that I think are really strong? Oh, I could say a lot about this, I could say a lot about that one. Well, not so much about this first one. I'm not quite sure that is clear, but the second one is clear, the third one and the fourth one. So these 3 will be the 3 reasons why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to go. So then I start literally saying that Martin Luther King believes that acquiescence is not the way to meet oppression because it allows, oops, sorry, typo. And literally I go right to my outline, right? Because it allows the conscience of the oppressor to slumber. The oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper, and another reason, right? And where did I get that from? From my outline, right? Allows the conscience of the oppressor to slumber. The oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper, and another reason, right? Number 4, right? So this creates my thesis statement. Now, the thesis statement, right, is not an introduction, right? Hopefully you're not saying, what? Of course it is, professor, right? It's not an introduction. So then you have to write an introduction, right? And you would write something like, the essay or 3 ways to meet oppression by or just for this.
Professor, are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
Oh yeah, am I not?
Oh no, you're not. I'm sorry. I didn't
Thank
realize.
God, I did all that and you didn't even see it. Okay.
Yeah.
You just saw me talking. All right, I'm sorry. Look at all this. I thought I was sharing my screen. So let me go back to everything we just did. Damn it. Thanks, Victor. So here's the prompt. And first we looked at the prompt, describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to go, right? And then all of you were giving me ideas, or I brought you back to the article and we were looking at it and we said, we looked at why this isn't the way out, right? So one way is I said the oppressed become evil as the oppressor. So then I did that and I just copied it and I pasted it for number 1, right? Then we went back to the article and Joshua gave us a second one. Whoops, I stopped sharing again. Joshua gave us a second one, right? And he said the oppressed must never allow the conscience of the oppressor to slumber. So I copied and put that in there. And then I went back to the article and I said, where else? Because we're in this paragraph where he's talking about, but this is not the way out, after he spoke about acquiescence, right? So, and I put this one here. The oppressed fails to be the brother's keeper. So if you look, it's the way of the coward. The Negro cannot win respect by his oppressor by acquiescing. There's all these reasons why Negro cannot win the respect of white people, or the South, right? So he gives you all these reasons. So all these are reasons that you would then you will be putting into your outline, like here, right? So there's the oppressment has never allowed the consciousness of the oppressor to slumber. The oppressed fails to be his brother keeper, and there were another reason, right? And you keep writing, more reasons. And the reason to do more reasons is because it gives you more from which to write, but also you can also pick and choose which are the ones that you are the most clear about and that you're able to do. I'm going to do this from the beginning. I'm going to delete it. Right? So So the thesis statement will grow from this, right? The thesis statement is like, my essay is going to be about X, Y, and Z, right? So we'll begin, and I said, if you look at the prompt's also going to give you some information to help that. So describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to go. The thesis statement could look something like this. Martin Luther King does not think that acquiescence is the way to meet oppression because, and then you go right to your list. Which ones am I going to write about? So let's say for now, I'll do it again. 2, 3, and 4, right? So the oppressed must never allow the conscience of the oppressor to slumber. Oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper, and another reason. I don't know what that reason is, but we'll just use that just so you can kind of visually see how that looks. So because, and you can just follow that, because, the oppressed must not allow the conscience of the oppressor to slumber. And you're going to explain that, right? When you, in your body paragraph. Then you're going to say the second reason is the oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper. And the third one, and another reason. Right, so you have at least 3 ideas that you can talk about, right, and support in your essay. You can, of course, paraphrase all of these ideas, but the basic idea are these. If you wanted to do the first one, you could do the first one. Then I started saying, this isn't, a thesis statement is not an introduction, so then you have to introduce it, right? And let me just go here, right? An introduction to this essay or any essay that you're writing should have one, the name of the essay. It may seem like duh, but definitely, right? It should have the author of the essay. Should have a short summary of the essay, and I'm going to say a definition or inclusion of anything you think the support the okay. So that I did that on purpose, and then of course it should have the thesis statement. So all of these things are what the intro should have, right? These things. So if we begin crafting the intro, I put the 3 ways to meet oppression by Martin Luther King, right? Starts this, so I check off 1 and 2. Not that you have to do it in this order, right? You could do it in another order, but let's do this order. Martin Luther King is an essay about King's ideas of how oppressed people deal with oppression. In the article, and then you say what he does, states, whatever, the ways in which they do it. That's the best thing, right? He ultimately thinks that non-violent resistance is the way to go. He also talks about acquiescence. I'm having as a way oppressed meets oppression in his, they say, I'm giving you information acquiescence because we have to understand what it means. I'm being editorial. Okay, so you're giving me a sense of the article, but specifically giving me information that'll help me talk about this. And then one way might be to then bring my thesis in it. Right, so that there's a, so we have the thesis there, right? And this will be your first, the introduction, right? And then if you construct your essay, you have your 3 body paragraphs, right? So body paragraph 1 will be on what? What will be the topic of body paragraph 1? Just gonna highlight our thesis statement. Okay. What would be the first body paragraph about if it grows out of the thesis statement? Somebody's gonna take a stab at it. Are you all being shy or you don't know?
What was the question, Professor? Can you stop?
Looking at the thesis statement, which is in yellow, to say what would be the topic of the first body paragraph.
What would be the topic you said?
Yeah.
Like what, like the first sentence you want?
Yeah, like what would be the body paragraph would be about? Because remember the body paragraph follows the thesis statement.
About his questions, right?
Say it again.
About the first time you talked about the question.
Yeah, well, though the first, it's the first thing that you list in your thesis statement, right? So if you're talking about that, I'm going to go on this here. The king does not think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression because the first reason is, this is the first reason, you must not allow the oppressor to slumber, right? So
now you were talking about the first reason a little more.
yeah, the first reason that you would be what you write in the body paragraph, right?
Yeah.
Right. So then the second body paragraph would be about what? If you look at the thesis statement, what would the second body paragraph be about?
What happens when oppressors become oppressed?
Yeah, well, not what happens when a person becomes oppressed, right? The body paragraph. So basically, your thesis statement, right? If I rewind, right, that if you go to the question is asking you to answer this question. So the whole essay is really about talking about why Dr. Martin Luther King doesn't think acquiescence is a good way. He's like, I'm not down with that one. So it's saying, tell us, what do you mean he's not down with it? Why is he not down with it? And you're saying, well, he's not down with it because for these reasons. And you go to the paragraph and it says the oppressors become as evil as the oppressor, the oppressed, the opposite, the oppressed cannot allow their oppressors to slumber. The oppressors fail to be the brother's keeper. All these reasons why he's not down with that. That's not a good root. And so then you list them, and to answer the question, that's your thesis, right? You say he does not think that acquiescence is the way to go to meet oppression. I'm going to say not down with it, but to meet oppression because the oppressed must not allow the conscience of the oppressor to slumber, because the oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper, right? And another reason. Those are the reasons why he's not down with it. So then when you write your introduction, the introduction includes the thesis statement, right? Which is saying, this is the way to construct it. I'm going to talk to you about this in this order. The first thing is going to be about this, how the oppressor cannot slumber, how the oppressed fails to take care of his brother, like take care of his family, his community, and another reason, the other reason that you have come up with. And so then that gets put right into your introduction after you've introduced it and talked to us, the author and everything and what it's about. Then you tell us what you're going to write about in the essay, and that's a thesis. And so if you look at it, all the information is in your thesis. The first body paragraph is the first idea, which is the oppressed must not allow the conscious to slumber. The other reason here is the oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper, right? And then the third reason is another reason. So the oppressed fails to be his brother's keeper is the second reason. And then the third reason, the body paragraph 3, and it's the whatever the other reason is. And the last thing you do is right? So that the essay, like all the essays you've been writing this semester, has an intro, right? The body, I'll maybe make the body a different color, right? And a conclusion, right? Those are the 3 elements of the essay, which in the writing directions, it says that you write your response in an essay with an introduction, body paragraphs that develop on your thesis, and a conclusion. And so what we're doing together, I was doing with you, is saying, first you look at the prompt, right? You look at the prompt and you make sure you understand it and get really clear on what it's asking you to do. And here is the second sentence, which was describe why King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression. Then next thing is we made a list of all the reasons why, right? Make it bold, make a list, right? And we came up with 6 reasons. And then we said, I'm going to pick 3, at least 3 of the strong ones. I'm going to craft a thesis statement. So Martin Luther King doesn't think acquiescence is the way to meet oppression, right? Because, and I'm going to give you my 3 reasons, right? I picked 3 from my list, and they'll get that. And then I start constructing the introduction, which always has the name of the essay, the author of the essay, a short summary of the essay, and a definition or inclusion of anything you think would support the understanding of the essay and the thesis statement. Okay. Oh, wait, sorry. Yeah. Cool. Then I started crafting the introduction based on that, right? The 3 ways to meet oppression by Martin Luther King. You named the essay, the title. Then I gave, it's an essay about, and tell us what it's about. I described acquiescence because as we were going over this, David said one of the things you would need to do at some point is define what does acquiescence mean? Like, what is he talking about? And then so we defined it, and then we put the thesis statement, which listed the 3 things that we were going to talk about. And the first body paragraph talks about the first thing. So if I made this, keep that red, and let's say here it is. Right? if I make the next reason another color, let me make it blue, right? And so this one is blue because that's the second thing in there, right? And then the last one, I'll just make bold. How's that? Right? And then this is the third body paragraph because it follows that, right? The red, the blue, and the black, bold and black. So body paragraph 1 has that. Body paragraph 2, let me just make this, oh, this is bold. This is black.
Is that the intro you want us to use, or that's just a sample?
That's just a sample. I mean, you have to come up with your own because remember, there's elements that might be, I didn't say much about the article, right? But the prompt that you're going to get, it's going to be similar, but it's going to be a different prompt. Like this will be different, right? For the one is going to be different. What I'm going through this with you because I think just to do the thinking that you have to do to prepare for it, to sit down and write it. Victor is saying start early so that you're not trying to figure it out at the last minute under pressure. That you read the thing. I've given you the tips are make sure you're clear that you understand the prompt. Then once you understand it, if it asks you to do something else, you make a list of whatever it's asking you to do. If it said to us, describe how many times he says oppressed in the article, you're like, how many times does he say it? You'd have to go through it and count, right? How many times? It's not going to be as silly as that. But you go to the essay and you find the examples and then you build your thesis statement. This is one of the paths I'm offering. After you make your outline, you build your thesis statement, and then you can start crafting your essay. Some people like writing the body paragraphs first and then going back and doing the intro. There isn't like a rule, but then you go into the intro and then you start typing the introduction. And there's a similarity to it because it is about this issue, right? The way Martin Luther King is an idea about how oppressed people deal with oppression, or ways to deal with oppression, or ways to whatever your wording is. You could say more about the article. Remember, this should be like 2 to 3 or 4 sentences describing what the article is about. Assume the person hasn't read it, and then your thesis statement. It could start there. The thesis statement could be at the beginning. It could be, you can craft it that way, and then the body paragraphs grow out of the thesis statement, right? You explain deeper, and then you have the conclusion. I think I saw Victor's hand up. I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute.
Actually, could you share one more time? Could you
Say it again?
share? Could you
Oh,
share
yeah.
one more? Yeah. Because I wanted to propose to the students that another reason why I think it's great to start now, and definitely prepare now. Can you scroll to the question real quick? My apologies. Is that we know from the reading that there are 3 possible topics for your examiners to write a prompt on, right? The professor has kind of said this already. There are 3, a question could possibly be about the acquiescence or the violent actions or the non-violent actions, right? They could actually describe why King proposes non-violence as a way of meeting oppression. So I would suggest craft 3 thesis statements. I know that sounds like a lot, but again, we have time. We can start early. Craft those 3 thesis statements, and then from there on game day, you could possibly alter one of them, or you can like redraft a previous thesis statement and use them, so you can kind of like reduce some of the time that will be with writing this essay. Because when this is done in person, traditionally when I did it, it was in person. We didn't have like the whole week to kind of to start it and to look at it. So that was a tip that I used, writing 3 possible thesis statements and kind of recognizing that they're all drafts and that they will all, one of them will be changed to better suit the question. So, think about that. That was it.
Well, thanks, Victor. That was he was kind of giving you a student tip, right? He's saying, okay, I don't know the prompt, but I can try to guess what it is. And it's probably going to be like this, or that. So if I make my own prompt, I can make my own prompts. I could craft them. So then when I see my question, I could see if one of them meets. Is that what you're saying, Victor?
Yes, that was perfectly articulated.
Okay.
Exactly. Guess what the question will be, and draft 3 thesis statements. It's a lot of work, I know, but trust me, it will be super beneficial.
I'm not going to contradict Victor. So, I mean, that's just a student tip. So you could, but that's like a peer-to-peer tip. So which is a pretty cool idea, right? But it gets you, one of the things I love about what Victor's suggesting is that it also allows you to engage with the essay in a different way, right? Because we just read it. So I don't want anybody to think just because we read it and the professor did it slow and we broke it down and he's going to post this up online that I can come watch it again, that is the end. I think it's stronger if you develop your own relationship with the essay and you're able to read it and look at it and think about it. And I think guessing, like, what could the prompt be? It can't be something completely from planet Mars. It has to relate to this essay. And the professor gave us an example of a possible one. So maybe it might have some relationship with that, so that might be a way. I love it because it allows you to engage with if I look at King through the lens of acquiescence, what does that look like? If I look at the way of King through violence, what he thinks about violence, what would that prompt look like? If it looks about like through nonviolence, what would that prompt look like? If it's about all three, then I better know all three so that I know I could talk about it. If it's about this, that, or the other, it could, that it's not going to be about this, that, and the other, but it's going to be a bit this, that, and the other that relates to the essay. I mean, the other thing I'm going to give you to think about is that by chance, this prompt was created. I had nothing to do with it. I'm not on the committee that decided it. The only thing I did was there were two choices, and this is the one I picked. Right? They gave us one that was very sad. I thought sad. I mean, this one's sad too, but there was another opportunity. There was another prompt, and so they gave us two to pick one, and I picked this one, partly because I felt like it in a way related to what we have been, some of the essays, particularly the second half of the class, not so much the first of taking your parents to college and, whatever, how Google makes us stupid, or getting our mind to read, or salvation. I'm trying to think of all the ones right in the beginning, but more this latter half, the Baldwin, the Truth, the Carol Anderson, the introduction by Jasmine Ward, those were specifically talking about, systemic change and talking about the ways in which racism is an oppressive system at play in the world. I was going to say our country, but in the world, right? So that there's a relationship between this article that we're reading about Martin Luther King and the works that you have read. So all of you have written extensively about the works that in this class, if you did the assignments, right? And you have until the 19th to finish doing the assignments. But and we just finished summarizing, White Rage and the Baldwin and the Sojourner Truth, and to different extent the essay that I wrote and the article that appeared in the paper, but particularly the Truth, the White Rage, and the Baldwin ones are essays that directly relate to what we're talking about. So I just want you to keep that, the focus on this essay for sure, but don't, but remember, that it has a connection to what we've been doing this semester. And then let's see what Victor says, and then I'm going to be quiet and ask questions. Also, don't restrict yourself. The exam might ask you which of the three approaches you most agree with. Yes, infinite amount of guesses. So draft your thesis statement knowing it'll be revised. Yeah, that's true. It could be sometimes, the prompts might ask you to say, how do you understand it, or how to reflect it on this, or, what's your opinion? Because again, remember, I was talking very much about being clear that this is Martin Luther King's opinions. I personally agree with a lot of them. Sometimes I might veer. It's not like I swallow the whole thing whole, but he had very clear ideas of what he wanted to do, and spoke about them and wrote about them with as much clarity as possible. So take Victor's tip into mind. That that gets, what I love about it is it really helps you think about the article a little more deeply. So the next time you read it, which I encourage you to read, not wait until you're ready to write about it to read it again, but that you read it again tomorrow. That maybe at one point you make an appointment, tomorrow I'm going to read it and spend some time thinking about it, and maybe come up with a possible guess at what the thesis question could be, what the prompt could be, and continue engaging with it until a week from today at mid. Yeah.
I'm
Ariel.
sorry, Professor, to cut
No.
you off. All right, so the bibliography and the final, I guess it's like the final essay.
Mhm.
All of that is due when?
Okay, so the bibliography was due last week,
No,
right?
yeah, no,
But
I understand.
but
Yeah.
but the deadline, the drop dead, I cannot take it after this day deadline is going to be on the 19th, right?
Okay,
Sunday
no.
the 19th, and I'll send it out. I wrote a note to send that out to the class, and then the essay though, the final exam, right, is due on the 21st by 11:59 p.m. on the 21st. So I'll send that in the same email just so everybody would know. And I'm going to remind you, even though we're not meeting for class, I'm still your professor. I'll send you emails and say, this is due, this is due. Remember, it's coming up. We have 5 days before your essay is due. Please don't forget to, to finish your essay and send
Also,
it up.
I'm sorry, Professor. Also, I just because the reason why I didn't do the bibliography because I was still confused, even though you showed us. I'm just one slight confused, but I think I'll just ask at the end of the class.
Okay. Yeah, and I shared one at the beginning of the class so you could see how it was organized by one of your students and who did a really good job. So that was a great example. Okay, we're almost out of time, and but I'm going to stay on a little longer. I mean, I'll answer questions, but if anybody wants to stay on and say, Professor, could you tell me if I owe something or what my grades are, I'll stay on. I'll put everybody else in a room, and then I will be, I'll give you some time. So we'll do that. And I don't have a meeting, but that meeting's not as important as all of you. It's actually a meeting about this class, the class that I'm teaching. We have meetings about the whole group, and I don't know why they're having a meeting the last week of school about it. Our semester's almost done, but there is one. But I'll stay on. Okay. So any other questions about the final?
So the writing prompt is going to be something totally different from what we just did, right?
Correct.
Okay, no, just making sure. So, okay.
Right. I'm going to say it's yes. I'm going to just say yes to you, Joshua, because I think you need to understand it will be something totally different.
All right, no, just making sure because
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets you hear this part, then the other one. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Yes, who's next? Somebody started speaking.
Yeah, so even if you start writing the essay early, you still might have to be ready because the prompt's gonna change, right?
So that one more time.
Even if you start writing the essay early, you still gotta be writing when the prompt comes out, it's gonna be different anyway, right?
Right, because right now you don't really know what the prompt is. I mean, what Victor was offering is that you can guess and try to see what it is, but I wouldn't go ahead and write a whole essay. Victor was suggesting writing possible thesis statements, right? To craft a whole essay that you think it's going to be, and then when you see something, it's something totally, unless you've got the time and you want to do the practice, you could do that. But otherwise, I would wait to get the prompt, and the prompt will be out in a week.
Certainly don't write a whole essay beforehand. That's going to waste a lot of time, but be flexible and yeah.
All right, other questions?
Yes, I have one more about the
Yeah.
the bibliography. You want 7 sentences about each article, correct?
Yeah, it's essentially a summary. So it's like 5 to 7 sentences. You're writing a summary of each article. And remember, you've already written summaries of some of them. If you did the assignment, and David, you've been catching up on your assignments. So if you've written this, so you don't have to write a whole new summary. If you've already written a summary of the Sojourner Truth one, you could use your summary. I mean, if I gave you feedback, you can make the changes, but you've already got it, right? And same thing with White Rage, we wrote about it, so you've written something in your essay about it. So, but the idea to answer to your question is yes. So each one, the annotation is you writing the annotation literally means a summary.
So we could reuse our summary that we used already.
Yeah, if you already did a summary, you could use the summary you already wrote. That's your work.
Really? Okay, I thought we had to write a whole new one. That's even better. All right.
Yeah, I mean, 2 of them you're gonna have to write new ones because they're brand new articles. So I'm not letting you just do a copy and paste job. You're doing some additional work in summary. And also, if you submitted it and I commented on it, then you have some corrections so you can improve on the one you wrote, right?
Okay, no, yeah, because that made more sense to me because I was gonna ask that can we use the summaries that we did, And then I guess I know, because I guess you want us to write, like, I guess where we got it from. Do we just use I guess what you gave us, like, because I know, like, in certain in all the articles it has like where you can click on and see where it came from. Do we use that?
Yeah, so if you look at the annotation, the citation, there's two things. One, because again, part of it is really an exercise in understanding formatting, and it's one of the things that, you know, that I even still have to do it. Like, I still write academic papers, I still write, you know, I was working on something, I had to create the whole bibliography for it. So it's a skill that you just will need in life, right? So but it's basically a skill. Do I have to memorize how to do it? No, I know how to. You have to know where to go to find the format. So the format means the order in which the information goes. Like let me just, as I'm talking, let me share my screen again and share the example. You know, of the student, right? Here, right? Whoops, let me close that, right? So the citation part, right? This part. So the student went and looked at the order, and if you look at there's a link that tells you to do it in a particular order. So it's usually the author's name. Oh, usually if there's an author, and all of these have authors, begin it, and it's usually last name, first name. Then there's a comma, and this one's and because there's a second person, and then there's a title, right? So the next thing that comes is the title of the article. The next thing is the name of the newspaper that the article is in, and then in this one it's the date. If we go up here to Baldwin, you know, the person took it from there. I'll talk to teachers as a title, the price of the ticket. That's because it gives you that in our information. It's St. Martin's Pest, the year, right? And this. So this information is on a lot of I think for some of the things may not be, but there's two ways. There's a link. I'm going to stop sharing. There's a link in the materials I gave you that tells you how the order. There's a way to look that up. And then I gave you the ultimate tip, which with most of the articles, I have to put them at least just a citation on top of the syllabus. So if you go to our syllabus, a lot of the information is there. So the important thing is for you to get a sense of that you understand the order, and that, like, some of you, like I said, some of you just wrote the name of the author and the title of the article and then did an annotation. So I just would write incomplete, because that just having the name and the article is not enough. The part of the reason of doing all of this is because technically, if you're submitting this big dissertation, people have to be able to prove all of this. The fact checkers have to make sure that everything you're saying is right. So that way they go into your bibliography, they go to the articles and they check it to make sure that you're quoting the things right, that you're doing that. And this is in the sense that if it gets published, like, you know, the story I had to write a bibliography story that's being published, is coming out right now in this month, a book called Teaching Black. That's the title of it. And so I have an essay in there. And so they had to make sure that everything I wrote in my essay, all those quotes and things, are actually true, and they had to go to the sources to verify them. And that means that's the difference with it being vetted and peer reviewed, is that when they print my article, they're like, you could believe this guy, because I just went through all of it. I checked all of his sources and they all checked out. So that's how come the article got in. So the purpose of it, all that information, is that you to be able to identify it. Now, sometimes they come from the internet, which is why, yes, now I'll look at the email. So I look at they put the link, because sometimes the source comes from the internet, and you can include the link with it, which some of you did and the student here did. But that's it. I hope that wasn't too much info, Ariel.
I'm sorry, Professor, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
Yeah, I just said I hope it wasn't too much info, but I was saying that, you know, that it's that the sources to get it, there's a link in the materials, that I also include the sources that I use in the class. In the front, sometimes they're not, like the Washington Post article will not be there, but there's enough information in the Washington Post article for you to be able to construct the citation for that.
Okay.
Great. Okay, other questions about anything?
Professor, for me, I would like to know like what homework I owe you.
Okay, so we can do that. We can do that next. So if there's no more questions about the final or the annotated or anything, I do want to say, and I'll send you all an email, that thank you for being in class this semester. Thank you for doing the work. For those of you who are doing the work, really, asking the questions, participating in class, handing the assignments, responding to my feedback, everything this semester. I thank you for it. I know that it's challenging to next semester. I'll be teaching this class, but in person. If people register for it, I'll be teaching it in person, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that. Maybe I'll get Victor as a tutor again. I don't know if I can request him. And oh no, you're graduating, right? You're going to be gone. But I'll have a tutor. Or moving on to somewhere else, not graduating and moving on. I think you mentioned that. So, but I won't be able to have Victor, but I'll have another tutor. But I want to thank you all for your time, for your attention, for your work. And I will, I always say this to my students, even though the semester ends, I remain your professor. So, definitely reach out to me if you need anything, recommendation letters. I got to write one for a student right now. Not right now, this week. And if you need anything, advice, talk, if you want a suggestion for a class or something like that, because you want to know, you're thinking of taking X professor for English 111, and great, my professor is saying X, Y, Z, and you want to know the real deal, I'm not going to divulge. I'll just let you know how they are as a teacher. So, but I'm here for you. So thank you for that. And so now I will stay on. If you don't have any questions, you can have a great afternoon. And so Miguel was first. So I'm going to see, I don't know if I can put us both in a room rather than put out. Let me see if I can do this. So I'm going to try something, Victor, Miguel. I'm going to try putting you in a breakout room, and then going to the breakout room. That means all of you will stay here if you're going to stay. But if that doesn't work, then I'll just bring you back in the room, and I'll put everybody else in the waiting room, and I'll just do that. Okay. So, and those of you who are leaving, take care. No. Okay, I think it worked. Right, I think it's just you and me right now.
Yeah, you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect.
So let me look at the my grade list. 1 second.
Also, I wanted to tell you that you are a very, very good professor. Trust me.
Thank you.
I've been checking. I've been taking other classes with other professors, and I don't know, it's a little different, but you are very well organized and everything. And thank you very much for everything.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I think they're going to send out evaluations, or I got to send you a note about an evaluation, because they used to do that before. And then during the pandemic, they stopped, but I think they did it last year, but they forgot to tell everybody. All right, so Miguel, I'm looking at everything, and
I think I'm missing only one. Oh,
you are. You are only missing one. Wait, maybe two. No, just one. The only one you didn't do is, for some reason, the taking your parents to college thing, the in-class thing. Otherwise, I'm seeing that you either, oh, well, here's this one. Yeah, you did that one. You did that. You didn't do, did you do a revision of the VIP essay?
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay, so that I'm going to put a mark here. Yeah, I have to send the reports out to everybody anyway, because I was going to say not do it, but I have to. because that's the other thing that sometimes, when I send the report, students will be like, I did a revision, Professor. Anderson, Baldwin, yeah. It's, honestly, I think you're fine, Miguel. You don't have to do that in class, that thing that you're missing, because it's not a graded one, and you've done all your other work, so it's not gonna bring your grade down. It's not gonna.
Okay, thank you.
So
And I
otherwise,
can focus on the last exam.
focus on that.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see. Now, how do I leave this room? Okay, here we go. I'm back. Does anybody else have a question or?
Me, I think I'm all caught up. Besides the bibliography, whatever the thing is.
Yeah,
I
do you
want
want?
double check?
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go here. I'm going to
I'm caught up though.
make session. I'm going to say David. Yes, Rayleni, if you don't have any questions, you can go. Yeah, people don't have to go. I'm only here to do one-on-ones to answer questions. So I'm gonna go back into the breakout room with David and go over his stuff. And then I'll be back here. So I see Logan, Aaliyah, and
Was I supposed to join the room?
say it again? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I have the thing open. Let's see, David. Yeah, you've been working, like making up for your exams. Yep, you made that up. You did this. Let's see, what did you do?
I'm gonna fix all the ones that you put correction on. I'm gonna fix them and resubmit them before the 19th.
All right, because did you do one for the VIP essay? So there's
Yes, I did VIP.
No, but did you do a revision?
I think so, but I think you did. I think you fixed it one more time. If I'm not mistaken, I gotta check.
All right. Yeah, because otherwise, your grades are pretty good, except except the Google essay and the VIP essay have them both as C's. So if you're going to revise those, that would be good, because the way it works with the class of the graded essays, I use the top 3 of the not the graded essays, the graded assignments. So it's different from the formal. So the graded assignments are the parents essay, the salvation essay, which you got an A, the minds read essay, you got an A, the single story essay, you got an A, the assignment, you got an A on that. And then that would whip, because the Baldwin one, you got a C plus, and you got an A on truth, but I'm only going to pick the top 3. So you already got 3 A's in the assignment section. So you're good there. So if you're going to revise, it'll be the formal essays, the Google essay and the Baldwin and the the Google essay and the VIP essay. If you haven't done revisions of those are the ones you should do. That would help bring your grade up.
Okay, I will do that. I'm gonna get to those before the 19th.
All right, cool. All right.
So all right, so I'm gonna leave now because I started the bibliography this morning. But I'm trying to finish it for you before today is over.
All right, great, David. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Take care.
All right. Okay, so I'm back. So do Umu, Logan, or Aaliyah have any questions or need?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Umu.
I want to know if I have any homework that I didn't do.
All right, so why don't you, I'm gonna do the same thing with you. I'm gonna put you in the breakout room and then we'll talk in there. So that way I can open up the, file. Okay. And then I'll see you in that room. Okay, so I have my chart up. Let me look you up, and then we'll talk about everything. I'm going to send everybody a report anyway, because I want to make sure that at the end of the day, I have all the same information. But you've done, let's see, all your assignments, that one. There's one, I don't know that in class one, people didn't do that one. There's one you're missing, but you've done all the others. So of the ungraded assignments, you've done them all. So that's that. Of the graded assignments, you've done them all. Let's see, you got an A on the truth, a C on that one, a B plus in the single story, a B on the mind's read summary. You've got a B on that, and okay, so now your VIP essay, you have a B plus. Your Google, you got a B minus. Okay, so from your graded assignments, there's two kinds. If you remember the email that I sent, there's two kinds of assignment that are graded. One is the formal essays that weigh more, and that's the Google one, the Word essay, the VIP essay, which was the first one, and then there's all these other assignments, the summaries and the respond to the single story. So from all of those, you've got like an A, a B plus, and then from those smaller assignments that are graded, I only take the top 3 grades. So the assignments that have the top 3 grades, those are the ones I take. And so you have an A, so that's one of them. The next highest is a B plus and a B. So from those, it's averaging out to like a B plus in those assignments. And the VIP essay, you got a B plus on it. So if you wanted to do a revision of that, you could revise. You can't revise the assignments, but you can revise the big essays. And then the Google essay, you got a B minus. And so I'm looking at your other essays. On your annotated, let me see what you got on your annotated, because I have it. Where is it at? The annotated, you got a C plus. So that one you might want to consider doing a revision. And so some of it is for you would be just really working on some of the annotations. Or maybe it's like maybe you got not a C plus, you got a B minus. Sorry. So if you want to try to fix your annotation, you can try to fix that to bring the grade up to it. You got a B minus, and I think you got 2.8. So that so you'll have, by tomorrow, you'll know all the graded ones, and so the ones that if you want to bring it up. But right now, if you keep going as you're going, you're kind of running a B-ish.
Okay.
So, and you can revise any of the formal essays, and that can help bring your grade up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm back for Logan or Aaliyah if you have questions.
Hi, Professor. It's Aaliyah.
Hi, Aaliyah.
Hi. Let me turn on my camera. Okay. With all the other stuff that I got back, I know I have some more stuff that I have to give to you. I have been like through a lot this semester. And I was reading the grades and the comments and stuff like that. And the one for the Google essay, can we like do a review or something like that? Because you said that I started promising and strong, but then it ended up being like confusion and you not knowing which point was which. So I kind of want to correct that because I have to redo this essay. Yes. And I don't want to like, mess it up again. So. Okay.
Yeah, no, the Google essay, the VIP essay, I'm going to send an email to everybody because this to make sure people know which ones they can revise, right? So all the formal essays, which are the VIP, the Google essay, and the Ward Anderson ones to revise, because those are the ones that are, that they just have more points to them. And then all the other ones that were graded, let me just look at yours. Well, actually Logan's here. Actually, it'll be easy. I'm going to put Logan in the waiting room because it'll be easier than that.
Okay.
And I'll bring it back. All right. So it's just you and I. Okay. So for your Baldwin and Truth ones, you got you got an A on the single story ones. These are the graded assignments that are not formal. The Minds Reads, you got an A+ for the Minds Reads. Salvation, you got A-. So what happens with those smaller ones, even though there's like 6 that are graded, I only use the top 3 grades.
Okay.
Right, for that. So for the smaller ones, you're good. You got an A+, an A, and A. So with those, it's the formal essays that like particularly the Google one that you got the D on that you need to work on.
Mhm.
And the VIP essay as well.
Yeah, I know about that one with my dad and, having to follow certain points. Yeah, I reviews that one.
So did you already revise it?
No, I'm in the process of doing that right now, actually.
Okay. So those are the ones that if you revise those, that'll help bring your grade up,
Okay.
inside of that. And then I would focus on those 2 revisions. And then once you get, then you're going to give me your annotated. I'm going to take a look at it and get it back to you.
Mhm.
And then the Word essay, when I send that to you, you could also, if you needed to revise that one, you can.
Okay. One thing I wanted to discuss with you though is in the Google essay, I don't really feel like there's a lot of points where it was like, cause the prompt was saying basically, the ways that it affects the mind. There was some ways, but it wasn't really a lot that I can touch on. So I was trying to improvise on the essay, but maybe I was looking at it in a wrong way. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's lots of ways that I'm trying to go to your essay. 1 second. All right, so let me look at your first thing. Now, all right, so if I look at let me share my screen.
Something I found that was funny was when you said that I chose the British way of spelling behaviors instead of the American way. Okay, so I come from a different country and that's how we learn how to spell. So
Okay, no, that's fine. That's good.
I'm trying to change that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's good. That's good. That's clarification so that I understand it. So it's not like an incorrect spelling because I knew what you were talking about and I knew that it was a different spelling. But, there's also different grammar rules, sometimes with us, like in the US, the whole idea of the comma inside the quotation mark. I know that British grammar has the comma outside the quotation mark. So sometimes I get students that have been educated in different countries, so I have to be able to have the conversation with them about it. But anyway, so what I say is promising. If we look at your essay, right? If we look at your essay, let me just make it bigger. Right, what I say is promising is that, yeah, you have a clear intro. And the 3 things that you're going to talk about is that the way it's affecting us is the first reason that it's spending time online has changed the way we pay attention. So that was one clear. And there's a lot of examples of how it's challenging to pay attention, right?
Okay.
One says it's harder to read a book, right? And so it goes this whole thing about skimming and all this stuff that it talks about, that it's hard for people to focus, that they skim. So there's all this stuff you could write about that. So that's what I mean. So one body paragraph will be talking about how it affects the brain.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Another body
everything in one.
Right. Boom. And then and organize it. And then one is just going to talk about what's difficulty with reading and why is it difficult to read and how they can't read long text. And then and search for the answer and the internet can summarize it for us, right? Then the internet is so addicting, it's nearly possible to stay away from it. I don't know if they talk about that or if that's your idea, but the idea is like so that's the idea with a thesis statement that you say, this is one reason and I'm going to explain it. This is the second reason I'm going to explain it. And this is the third reason I'm going to explain it. And then I'm going to see 3 paragraphs that only talk about that. Then I'm going to talk about it all over in each paragraph. One paragraph is going to focus on one idea, another, and the third on the other. And that's what I was going over today in class, that when you're looking at the prompt, to look at the article and find 3 things that are going to answer the question. That way you can organize your body paragraphs around those 3 things, and your thesis will list what those 3 things are.
Okay, I understand now.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, cool. And then we have until the 19th to get all this stuff done. I know that seems like it's going to be tomorrow, but but it's not. You know, you have a little bit of time.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about the stuff that we went over today. I know that you say the prompt is going to be different, and also Victor threw out that we should, try to formulate 3 different theses and stuff like that. I kind of saw the movie, and I think I read a book once about the situation, so I really have like a good idea on what is going on. I just want to know, because he was talking about a week to get ready. Are we going to have to write the paper on a set day, or do we have it leading up to
you have a whole week in which to write it.
Oh, okay.
Right. So you're going to have the prompt on literally Tuesday night at midnight next week, whatever date that is. It becomes 14th. It becomes available, and then you can read it, and then you can start working on it. But what he was saying, not to wait till the last minute.
Okay. I'm going to try to get everything out to you by this week, and then I can be ready for the prompt that's coming up, so I can just put like my whole focus on that.
Okay, that sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome, Aaliyah.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. And am I alone? No. Logan.